What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another video by yours truly. We are going to lock in, present this information pretty quick because I got a tight schedule today. So we're going to keep the jokes to the bare minimum and just shoot it straight. I want to talk to you about the male version of Jiaoqiu, the pink male fox that's coming in the second half of 2.4. A lot of people are already being negative Nancy's toward this character. Listen, if your goal is to skip all of patch 2.4 to save for patch 2.5, I completely respect that. Also, I completely understand it as well, because let's be honest, 2.5 is being promoted harder than the Wolverine and Deadpool movie right now on both Twitter and YouTube. And I'm pretty sure most of us have saw it, whether we want it to or not. It just gets shoved in your goddamn face. Pause. But I feel like people are already being dismissive of Mel Miko's kit because they don't understand how the language of Hoyoverse works with regards to the multipliers of what these supports are given to the team. We already know he can inflict a bunch of debuffs, which is a battery. It's a literal energy recharge for Acheron. He is 100% gonna be best in slot for Acheron, but that's all you know. And then you look at, oh, we got his kit changed during the pre-beta. This always happens, right? But then you got people saying like, oh, he doesn't give that good of a buff or whatever the case. I want to show you what he can offer in comparison to all the other supports in the game, because he's actually incredibly unique and the best at what he does. And he's a great asset to add to your account if you can afford it. Another great asset is Zuyan from Zenless Zone Zero. That's a hell of an asset. Okay, I know I said I wasn't gonna do no jokes, but I couldn't help myself on that one. Let's take a look at what I have prepared for you for Mel Miko. Bear with me here, because a lot of this is going to make perfect sense and it's going to explain the value I'm trying to put onto this Mel Miko. I'm not trying to sell you on the character. I'm just trying to explain to you the character's real value here and why you should be picking them up. And once you know that information, you can make that decision on your own. The damage formula of a Hoyoverse game: you have the character's attack, you have their skill percent multiplier, you have their additive percent multiplier. This right here is the most abundant multiplier in their games. It's the damage bonus. Whenever you see increased damage by 30%, increased damage by 70%, it boosts damage. That's the additive. Follow-up attack damage bonus, that's right here as well. But Hoyoverse has a way of delivering sentences that can indicate whether it's a additive damage bonus, or if it's a resistance, or if it's a vulnerability, which we'll get to. But the other, continuing on for the formula, you then have your crit damage value, right? The crit damage value, that's your Sparkle, that's your Bronya, that's your Yukong. Those are the supports, for examples, that can increase the crit damage for characters. Then you have defense, right? The defense of the enemy. Your characters are Black Swan, Pella, Silverwolf, and E1 Ranmei. They can shred the defense of the enemy. Then we have resistances. We come down here to resistances: Ranmei, Black Swan, Silverwolf, Acheron, Pella. And Pella's only for the ice. But every supportive character is doing something to this formula to increase your damage, right? We also have toughness, right? When you get rid of their toughness, when you break their shield, there's a 10% increase in damage that you're going to deal. Actually, it just reduces your damage by 10% if you don't break the bar. So you just go back to 1.0. Finally, the most important thing that we're gonna be talking about in this video is vulnerability. This is another additive percent damage bonus. In other words, multiplicative. It goes in a different box from the additive percent damage bonus, thus giving you a whole new multiplier on the entirety of the formula. Keep with me here. Here's the thing about Mel Miko. He's a vulnerability buffing god. In addition to inflicting debuffs and battering Acheron, he's also dealing some pretty decent dot damage as well. What I want you guys to take into consideration is there are a number of variables in this game that increase and affect all damage in the game, whether it be crit damage, whether it be break effect damage, whether it be dot damage. There's certain variables on this formula. Doesn't matter what kind of damage you're doing, it's gonna affect it. Defense is one, resistance is one, vulnerability and toughness. All four of these right here will affect your damage no matter what. Whereas additive does not affect break effect damage. It just doesn't. You know, I don't care what kind of damage bonuses you have, it's not going to increase the damage of a break effect. Okay, crit damage doesn't affect dots, just doesn't. But all of these do. I know I'm yapping your ear off, but it's going to make perfect sense. Mel Miko is a vulnerability specialist. And here's the problem with vulnerability. Vulnerability is the most scarce buff in the game, and it is multiplicative, as I explained to you guys. I'll give you an example. Welt, he gives a 12% vulnerability damage bonus to your team when he ults, but it's only 12%. Most importantly, the uptime is only going to apply when he ults, and it lasts for 2 turns. Boot Heal gives another vulnerability damage bonus, but it's during his standoff and it's self-serving. He's the only person that benefits from him. It's only him that gets it. Black Swan, her ult gives another vulnerability buff, but it only works during the enemy's turn. So if you don't have somebody on the team that can ult during the enemy's turn, then you're just never getting the access of her ult's vulnerability buff. It only works on dots, pretty much. Then we have Sampo. When he ults, he gives a vulnerability damage buff. However, it also only works on dots. Furthermore, the uptime of all of these characters is very low, and it has a lot of conditions that make it unreliable and inconsistent. However, Mel Miko, practically permanent uptime. And the reason I say practically is you have to kind of like load up the damage. I forget the term for that. Rev up, I guess, is the term you can call it. You have to rev up because he applies the Ash and Rose stacks. And once you get max stacks, then you never have to worry about not having max stacks. That's what I mean by perma uptime, but you have to like rev it up first, which doesn't take long. Because when he pops his ult, he brings the stacks up from everybody to the same amount of stacks on the field. Anyways, it's a massive percent increase, more than quadruple what Welt is giving to the party, more than quadruple, and way more uptime. And most importantly, it's the one thing on the formula that's starving. When we talk about increasing damage of characters, you have to go, the box of the formula that's not getting a lot of nourishment, so to speak. For example, everybody gets a lot of additive and people get crit damage, but they don't get a lot of defensive shred, which is why you need Pella and Silverwolf for certain characters. Everybody doesn't get a lot of resistance, which is why Ron May is so damn powerful, because she has an all type res pin. That's massive, but nobody gives vulnerability. So when you get a character coming out and they got perma uptime and it's a massive vulnerability increase, and you just build around the team to fill in the blanks, fill in the whatever the hell team you're running, fill in the defensive shred, fill in the crit damage, fill in the toughness break, whatever. Then you have that one character given vulnerability. That's going to be a much bigger damage number on your team. So this guy, picking him up and adding him to your account, I assure you, he's going to make Acheron very fucking strong. Yes, because nobody else is doing what he does for Acheron. Acheron already gives herself an all type res pin. Acheron already gives herself an additive damage bonus. Acheron already has crit damage. And then you can use Pella or Silverwolf to do the defensive shred. Finally, Mel Miko gets placed in and he gives a vulnerability. That is gonna be insane fucking damage for Acheron. I'll tell you that right now. But putting him in on the non-sustained compositions as that third unit, whereas the other two are given the additive, the all type res pin and defensive shred, and then this motherfucker comes and gives a vulnerability. Sustainless comps, he's gonna be a fucking machine. So for meta slaves, not skipping this character is not worth it, because I assure you, sustainless comps, he's gonna give that final fucking formula piece that takes your damage to the next level. But apart from that, there's always gonna be a team, no matter what team it is, that can make use of the vulnerability damage bonus. With all of that context provided, I just want you to know that if you skip Mel Miko, you're skipping a character that is doing something nobody else in the game is doing right now. He is actually disruptive to the supportive infrastructure of Honkai Star Rail right now, because vulnerability is just so scarce, and all the conditions with the characters that can do it are either trash, don't offer enough of the buff, or it's really like restricted. Okay, like I said, Black Swan, she gives one, but it's during the enemy's turn, which if you don't have a character on your team like Acheron, by the way, which Acheron can make use of it, but you have to time it correctly. But if you don't have somebody on the team that does a good like ult, then you're never going to see the value of Black Swan's buff outside of dots. Whereas Mel Miko is giving a bigger version of her vulnerability buff, and her vulnerability buff is strong as hell. No freaking just straight up, here you go, and it's there all the time. That is very reliable. Now, putting them both on the same team for Acheron is going to be some crazy numbers, which That's why I'm picking him up. I want my Acheron to perform on the highest level. He is going to be needed in order to do that. But apart from Acheron, because his kit infrastructure is just so rare, the value of him in the long term of the game is intact. It's not like, oh, he's going to get buffed next. He's going to get power creep next patch. Then again, this is Honkai Star Rail. You never say never, right? That's always on the table. I will never take that off the table because of what I've seen so far. 2.5 Linksha, that's the biggest fucking blatant power creep I've ever seen. But not getting off topic here. If you're choosing to skip them, completely understand. 2.5 looks absolutely insane. But I just wanted to have this information there readily accessible for you guys so that you know and you don't have the wrong idea with regards to what he does. It's not additive. It's not all type res, which those exist in the game from many supports. It's vulnerability, and he's the only one that's doing it so well. Hopefully this brought some good value to you. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.